Hey everybody, welcome into Tuesday, February 28th edition of To The Point. It's the last day of February, shortest month of the year, 2023, if you can believe it. And we are only 3 days away from the NHL trade deadline, and already so much has happened. If you haven't listened to yesterday's show, I encourage you to go back and do that. I broke down the Timo Meier deal to the New Jersey Devils. I talked about the Leafs adding Jake McCabe, Sam Lafferty. I got into all the other stuff from over the weekend. Barry Trotz is now the GM in Nashville. He's working with the team already, hands on, as they are complete fire sale, and much, much more. And today, I want to talk about some matchmaking. I want to get into other players that could be on the move and good fits for these players. But before we get to that, we have news pre show. And that is always fun. When you get a trade before the show even starts, I get stuff to get into already. And let's start with the news of the day, the news of I didn't really know if it was going to happen. There's never certainty that Patrick Kane was going to be willing to leave the Chicago Blackhawks. It was always well, is he going to go? Will he leave Chicago? He loves it there. Will he like it someplace else? There was never a clear answer to the question of if he would waive his no movement clause. We waited. I pondered New York. I've linked him to the New York Rangers since this time last year. I thought the New York Rangers made the most sense for Patrick Kane. I talked about it. I pondered it forever. And then I kind of gave up on it last week when I said that the Vegas Golden Knights would be a fit because they had cap space with Mark Stone going on IR. And it left an opportunity for them to swoop in. But here we are on February 28th, and I don't care where he goes to because I don't care who wins any game. But I do enjoy being right, and this is a long prediction that has come true. And this is actually a bet. I made a future on Patrick Kane becoming a New York Ranger over a year ago, and I'll get to cash that after the show tonight because Patrick Kane is headed to the Big Apple. He's heading to the Rangers to play at Madison Square Garden, and it's official. Patrick Kane is headed to the team to reunite with Artemi Panarin, to team with Mika Zibanejad, with Chris Kreider, Keandre Miller, Jacob Trouba. And for the first time in nearly a decade, Patrick Kane is on a team that has a chance to win the Stanley Cup. He's on a legitimate contender, and that's a good thing because he's truly one of the best players of our generation, one of the best players in league history. And here's the thing. I created a trade last week, and I thought the Patrick Kane sweepstakes would be big. But the return going back to Chicago is a second-round pick, which is a conditional second that can become a first if New York makes the conference finals. But also, it's in 2024 or 2025, so it's not this year's first, a couple of years down the road. And they also get a 2023 fourth-round draft pick. So as of right now, it's a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Patrick Kane. I mean, this is a steal for the New York Rangers. This is a great trade, and how could you say no? And this is the difficulty for Chicago when a player has a full no move and you can only trade him to one place. Clearly, Patrick Kane was only willing to go to New York. He was only willing to play for the Rangers, another Original Six. And Patrick Kane can say at the end of his career he'll play for the two teams with the best jerseys in hockey, Chicago and New York. It's my opinion anyway. He goes to another Original Six team. He has a chance to win the Cup, and he held all the cards. In other situations, you can trade a guy anywhere. If you don't have a no move, you don't have a no trade. But Patrick Kane was given a no movement clause. I don't blame Chicago for doing it at the time. A decade ago when they signed him, they thought he'd be there forever, and he almost played out the entire length of that contract. And the way it was going, the way his season went, conditional first, I would have preferred, if I was Chicago, to get a conditional, get your second that could become a first and a prospect. I would have taken Zach Jones, or I would have taken potentially Vitaly Kravtsov at the time if he was still on the team and not in Winnipeg, or Sinchin. That's how I would have played it. And you can't sign all of them, so that becomes problematic down the road when you have all these guys and you have to let them go and you have to move them yourself. So that's the way I would have handled it. I don't know, but this is about what you'd expect, because New York was the only team bidding. It was New York bidding against themselves, and clearly Chris Drury noticed that. He was aware of it, and he said, "You know what? We're going to make this work. I'll give you conditional first, but I'm not going to give you more than that because you're going to be stuck with this player through the trade deadline, and I know you don't want that." A team that's going to miss the playoffs, a team that only aspiration this season is to land Connor Bedard, you want to lose games. And having Patrick Kane on your roster does not help you accomplish that goal. So, future Hall of Famer. They also got Vladimir Tarasenko and Nico Mikkola earlier in the trade period. So they've added to their roster considerably. And it's been an absolute arms race in the Eastern Conference. New Jersey got Timo Meier. The Maple Leafs got Ryan O'Reilly and Noah Chari and Jake McCabe, amongst others. Tampa landed Tanner Jeannot. Boston got Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway. So every team's getting better. Every team in the East believes that they can win, but they know it's going to be an absolute war to get there. And I talked about this yesterday. I don't love the New York roster. I would have preferred for New York to trade for Patrick Kane and not trade away the assets they did to get Vladimir Tarasenko. Vladimir Tarasenko is like an old car. It's not always it's not always easy to start, and it might not get you to the destination. It might not get you down the road where you need to go. It might not get you to the gas station. It may get you nowhere because it's a used car. You're not taking it cross country. You have no faith in the vehicle. Tarasenko's a bit piece. And I talked about this before, how the article said a blockbuster trade. Vladimir Tarasenko, the days of him being a blockbuster, he's only blockbuster in that his stock is maybe equal to Blockbuster Video. That's about it. He's got one goal since being traded to New York. One more than me, you, and Dupree. That's it. He doesn't forecheck. He doesn't get involved physically. And when you're hanging around Artemi Panarin and he's your motivator, he's your pulse, it weighs on you and you start to play even less competitively because Panarin's afraid of his shadow out there. I love Zibanejad. I love Chris Kreider. Trocheck brings momentum, brings an energy, brings a presence to the team. Shesterkin's one of the best goalies in hockey, despite having a mediocre season just like Vasilevsky, but get him to the big games. I'll take him over just about anybody. But does this team have the forecheck? Do they have the wherewithal to overcome some of these beasts in the East? Can they beat New Jersey? I don't think it's a gimme. I think they should be the favorite, but I don't think it's a gimme by any means. Can they beat Carolina as currently constructed? They beat them in 7 last year, but I like their team better. I like having Andrew Kopp. I liked having some of the pieces they had last year that competed hard. Kane's a better player than Artemi Panarin when it comes. He's a better passer. He has better compete, and he knows how to do it. Maybe he'll bring out the best in Panarin when it comes to team play. Because Panarin majors in selfish hockey. Tarasenko hasn't been the same since multiple shoulder surgeries. That's not his fault. That's just your body not reacting the way it used to. So I don't blame it at all for that. But I like the Tyler Mott addition. I like that they're being aggressive and they're trying to win. Gotten a really good defenseman instead of getting Tarasenko? Possibly. Could you have pulled a trade together for an Orlov who was available or a Chikrin who's still on the open market and not said, okay, let's go get Tarasenko because we're desperate that Patrick Kane might not come here? Let's preach patience and not panic. Clearly they decided they didn't have the wherewithal to do that. I like their team, but I have my doubts that they can get to a Stanley Cup final, and this is the team I picked to win the Cup at the start of the year. To me, to win, you need just every element. You need skill, which the Rangers have an abundance of. You need grit and determination, which some of their top players have, Kreider, Zibanejad, Trocheck, as I've mentioned. But do you have enough of it? Do you have enough guys who are willing to take a hit to make a play? A couple forwards up front who I don't believe are. Because to take a hit to make a play, you need to be willing to go into the corner on the forecheck. Is 10 going to do that? 91 going to do that? See them play before? That's not exactly their MO. Not their mantra. It's their defense. They have enough depth on defense. Is Ben Harper going to be playing minutes in the playoffs? It's in their top 6 currently. Is he going to be playing minutes? Are you going to add to this defense? Can you upgrade it? Trade away a lot of assets already. Can you put a package together featuring Zach Jones with Sinchin that can bring somebody to this team? Likely not going to be Chikrin, but even Gavrikov would be an add over what they have currently. Having a blend, having a mix of everything is the way you win. It's like life. You need a balance. I think the healthiest people and the people that seem to be the most successful and the happiest have a balance in life where they're not doing too much of one thing. You're not working so much that you're burnt out. You're not partying so much that you're an alcoholic or you're overweight, whatever, doing negative things. You have the perfect mesh so that you can go through life feeling fantastic. I'm glad that Patrick Kane's in New York because that's clearly where he wanted to go. Gerard Gallant is a good coach and he knows how to get his teams to the playoffs, and they were one game away. They still have 3 days. I would try to put something together to add to my defense. Because so far you've added one defenseman, Nico Mikkola, who's a depth guy, and 3 forwards, Tyler Mott, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Patrick Kane. The Mott's a perfect bottom 6, a 4th-line guy I'd love to trade. And you give up nothing for him. His Patrick Kane deal, for what you gave up, that's an A. My grade for that, because you're trying to win, and it's Patrick fucking Kane. For a conditional 1st and a 4th? Yeah, I'll take it. All day, every day. The Tarasenko deal? Sammy Blais plays pretty hard. Sammy Blais, yes, he's got his injury problems. When he's in the lineup, he battles. He is a good player. I would have liked another defenseman. And I think Chris Drury, unless he does something over the next couple days, which I'll give him that opportunity to go out and do it, I don't see this team having enough. I don't see, just with the likes of Ben Harper playing minutes, Braden Schneider being asked to potentially be in the top 4. Ryan Lindgren was hurt over the weekend, who's on their top defense pair, and he's invaluable because he makes Adam Fox look better. Just an underrated guy who just plays his position and you don't notice him on the ice, and that's what makes him so effective. Mark Method-esque. They're one injury away from clear fucking panic on that back end, and I never want to be in that position. I will take more defense depth over forwards because I can plug a forward in on the wing and he can just hide for an entire game and I can survive with it. On defense, it's much tougher to do. And the way their team is built, I don't expect this team to be a great team defense team, just the way they're set up. So it'll be on Igor Shesterkin to be better than he's ever been. To stand on his head and make 30 to 35 saves a game and be the best goalie in hockey while scoring many goals up front and having a lethal power play. That's where I see this. So Patrick Kane is a Ranger, but I don't think the Rangers are better, but I don't think Chris Drury has done the correct thing in looking at his roster and trying to get better. I think he panicked on the first Tarasenko deal, and it's hurting him currently where there are still good defensemen available because there's only seemed to be forwards traded other than Jake McCabe lately to acquire. And now you don't really have the arsenal to do it unless you throw something together and make it work. But you have limited cap space. You have limited assets, and you're looking around at a defense that is thin. I'm curious to see what the Rangers do over the next couple of days. Are they done? Do they make another trade? Can they get a defenseman? I think it's paramount that they do. And it's not going to be a big name because you can only do so much at the trade deadline. I get that. But these teams this year, the Eastern Conference is playing for keeps. It's a man's game, to quote Klay Thompson. You need as much as you can possibly get because the teams around you are all pointing snipers at you. And if you're holding a rifle, you're fucked. If you have a glaring weakness, these teams are good enough to expose it. They will make you pay for having that weakness. And you can look around and you'd say, well, for Toronto, it's goaltending. Could possibly be. Boston's got better goaltending than Toronto on paper. So does Tampa. Rangers have better goaltending. Carolina, don't trust it at all, but we'll see. So maybe that's Toronto's. New York, I think it's their back end. Boston, I don't know if they really have one. Tampa, it's wear and tear. I could also look at their back end and think they need some help there, which I do. If you make it to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, it's a lot of hockey. It's a lot of hockey that the teams around you aren't playing. So their kryptonite might just be fatigue. because it makes cowards of us all. You're tired. You might not be as sharp. And eventually the younger legs on the other side who have been sitting at home while you've been playing hockey might be able to expose you. Maybe you have enough to power through it. Maybe you have the intestinal fortitude of the 80s Islanders or the late 80s, early 90s Edmonton Oilers. But those are special clubs. I mean, Tampa's a special team. But every team will have a weakness going in. Boston's an older team too. Do they have enough to make it through an entire postseason run with their team? Nick Foligno's an older guy. Bergeron, older guy. Marchand, older player. Krejci, older player. So do they have the firepower? Do they have the cardio to get through an entire playoff run? We'll see. But if you have a team and you can limit the amount of warts that you have, you can limit the number of things that a team can expose you, then your chance to win improves significantly. And that's where I see with the Rangers. I see a clear weakness. With Toronto, I don't think it's as glaring as the Rangers. Like Toronto's back end is better than the Rangers on pay, just top to bottom. I think Keandre Miller. I think the Rangers have two better defensemen than Toronto has one. As does Boston. Lindholm and McAvoy are better than any defenseman on Toronto. Tampa, I would agree with that too. I think Sergachev and Hedman are better than any defenseman on Toronto. So every team, but how can do you have a good team defense? Do you have enough around the edges to make it work? But it's interesting. Every team still has a couple days to try to improve their roster, to try to find more other Rangers news before we move off them. Keandre Miller was involved in a dust-up Sunday night in the Rangers win over the Los Angeles Kings, where he's in a scuffle with Drew Doughty. They're sort of wrestling in the corner, and he spit on Drew Doughty. He admitted it after the game, said he did not mean to do it. It just happened, and he was suspended for 3 games today. This is precedent by the league. We've seen spitting incidents before. There's no place for it. But I'll say this. I believe Keandre Miller. This guy does not seem like a dirty player, does not seem like a scumbag, because that's a scumbag move to spit on another human being on purpose. He hasn't said anything in the media that would really, question the character of Keandre Miller. I think this was poor timing. Things were happening, 2 guys getting involved physically, and something comes out of his mouth. Maybe I'm wrong, but I watch the Rangers a lot. I've seen Keandre Miller play a ton. I love him. He's incredibly talented. He's very, very good. But for once, I buy him saying that, because that's just not the way I see him play, the way he carries himself. I'm fine with the 3-game suspension, but I will also say I think Keandre Miller is being honest when he says he didn't mean to do it. It was an unfortunate event that transpired. But I'm fine with the league suspending him. But I don't see it as a malicious thing, and I don't think he did it targeting anybody or out of malice. So the Rangers make another move. So Rangers do that. Before the Rangers trade today, I wanted to lead the show originally with the Edmonton Oilers. And it was not because they traded a certain player today who I have no time for. It's because I was watching their game against the Boston Bruins last night, and the Edmonton Oilers make me mad. The Edmonton Oilers really make me mad, and they shouldn't, because I don't care if they win. But I'm looking at Connor McDavid and what he does on an average night. And Connor McDavid is play in my life. Sidney Crosby is great. I think Connor McDavid's on a whole other level. I haven't seen anybody like him. He used to just be a great playmaker. He now has 50 goals. He's leading the NHL in scoring. He's going to get 60-plus goals this season and win the Rocket Richard. He's improved his shot. He's still the best passer in the game. He's one of the best passers in the game. He's lightning quick. There's nothing he can't do. The true weapon, and you think about what Ollie just said, scoring goals at a record pace for himself, 50 goals in 61 games. You have him having over 116 points on the season, I believe, already. He's playing so fantastic. And the Edmonton Oilers are hanging on to third in the Pacific Division. And they seem to lose every second game despite McDavid being a rock star. And I blame this on just team building and the ineptitude we've seen in Edmonton. It frustrates me because a team that he's on should not suck this much. They should not lose as many games as they do. They should not lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He got to a conference final last year largely because he would not be stopped, and Leon Draisaitl played fantastic on one leg. But it was not because Ken Holland put a great team in front of him. He had a crap team in front of him, and the two great superstars carried them there. But it angers me that a player that is so good is stuck in this mess. Patrick Mahomes has never been on a bad team in his NFL career. Why? Because his organization has put good players around him. For the majority of LeBron James's career, he was on good teams. And the one time you could argue he was not on good teams is when he was choosing the players to play with. But when his management had LeBron James, they were always competitive. He made it to 9 straight finals. These are the best. Brady never missed the playoffs in New England. He was always there. He had competent people around him. They built good teams. He wins 7 championships. Mahomes has won 2. LeBron has won 4. I could go to other sports, but you rarely see the best athlete, the best player in the respective sport be on such a painful crap team. The Pittsburgh Penguins have made the playoffs for 16 straight years. They're always competitive. They built good clubs. They made it to second, third rounds. But no. The Oilers are not well run. They do not have good players. Their draft picks over the last number of years, haven't seen a whole lot of them come through, have you? Is Raphael Lavoie being good down there? Xavier Bourgault, the big goal scorer, is he translated to the NHL yet? Philip Broberg, does he look like a stud defenseman already? Evan Bouchard. Not drafting. You can't sign anybody in free agency that does anything. And you have the best player in the world, and you're on it. Now, could Connor McDavid play better defensively? Yes. But he's also got 116 effing points, okay? Maybe somebody else could be a little better defense. Could have an exit zone pass out of the zone by a defenseman. That makes sense. Maybe you don't give a bunch of money to Brett Kulak in free agency. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, yeah, me. I said it the second they handed him the contract. Cody Ceci, love him to death. I'm not giving him that kind of money. It's just been mistake after mistake. And the best player in the world is stuck in ineptitude. He's stuck in the mud of just blah. The Oilers are there. The Oilers are competent because of him and only him. And of course, Draisaitl, top 5 player, better than most of the league. He's going to win the Hart. He's going to win the Rocket. And yet they may not. They may be a wild card team. And the brutal irony here for the Edmonton Oilers is I've just come to this conclusion last night watching. The Edmonton Oilers need help, offense, defense, net. They need help in all three. But at the trade deadline's in a couple days. They should not be looking to acquire any forwards. I would be okay if they do not acquire one forward over the next 3 days. And here's why. Here's my reasoning. Here's my thought process. I don't care if you get another skilled forward that can score goals. I don't care what you're doing there. I'll bank on McDavid being legit. I'll bank on Draisaitl being the man. Nugent Hopkins is playing better than he ever has. And Zach Hyman. 4 really good forwards. Hopefully Yamamoto can stay healthy, can score a goal here and there. I really like Klim Kostin. I talked about that before. He's playing like a man on a mission. Played great last night in that Bruins game. Love him. But you need 2 defense. At least 2 defense at this deadline. Here are my thoughts. They're rumored to be in the mix for Mattias Ekholm. I get that. He's under contract for another 3 years, so you have a player with term. Nashville's on a fire sale. They stink. They want to see what they can get for some respective players. So if you can get Mattias Ekholm, do it. I still think he can play. I worry about down the line, but I think he'll be good for at least the next 2 years. McDavid may ask for a trade by then anyway, so do it. If you can't get Ekholm, I'm calling the Anaheim Ducks on Cam Fowler. Not John Klingberg. No interest. But Cam Fowler can still play the game at a high level. He has term on a really good defenseman in the NHL for a decade. Not elite, not crazy, but he's been very good. There's also Jacob Chychrun. Reportedly, they're in the mix yesterday. I find it hard to believe that they can get Chychrun because do they have a good enough prospect with picks to go back to Arizona? I don't know if they have enough for Arizona to say, okay, we're going to part with Jacob Chychrun. I don't know if they can do it. So those 2 names are the big names. And I also, if I'm Edmonton, I'm getting Nick Jensen from the Washington Capitals. Nick Jensen just moves the puck. He's solid defensively. He's not going to change your life, but the Edmonton Oilers need some just reliability. They need somebody that he's going to do what you think he's going to do. Put puck, tape to tape. Get puck out of the zone. Whatever it might be. Just he's simplistic. He can make a pass. He's not going to be over offensive. But he's had a very good season in a tough situation in Washington where John Klingberg hasn't played in over 2 months. He's their number 1 defenseman. He's had to play more minutes. He's had to take more responsibility, and he's handled it. Hasn't complained. He's taken it on the chin, and he's played those extra minutes. I like Nick Jensen a lot. He's a pending UFA. He's a hell of a lot better than Brett Kulak. If you could somehow get Brett Kulak moved in this trade, that would be a win in and of itself. That'd be an Oscar Emmy-winning performance from Ken Holland if you could get that Joker of the Month out of there, but I doubt that's happening. But if you can go and you have Darnell, he's going to be there. This is no particular order. You have CC. Likely Evan Bouchard. Let's put in Chychrun just for the fun of it. You add Chychrun there. You get Nick Jensen. That's 5. I think if you're going to trade for a Chychrun, if you trade for an Ekholm, I think Philip Broberg is going to be traded. I'm okay with that because I'm trying to win, and he hasn't exactly shown much. You have Vincent Desharnais, looming there. He could play. You have a number of defensemen that don't make a whole lot. I don't know. I just think they need 2 defensemen, and it's non-negotiable for me. Has to happen. Has to happen because they're not winning without it. Because Stuart Skinner and Jack Campbell, neither of them are a number 1 goaltender. Neither of them I trust to make a big save in the playoffs. So your team defense is going to have to be solid. It's going to have to be competent. And they don't have it currently. You'll unlikely move Brett Kulak, so Kulak will be your 6th defenseman. But if your defense is Darnell Nurse, Chychrun, Jensen, Ceci, Bouchard, Kulak, that's a hell of a lot better. That's a hell of a lot better. I just look at this team, them fail time after time to address their needs. And they play Boston last night. They lose the game by 1 goal, and that can be, you lost to the best team in hockey, which is true. Boston's won 7 in a row. They're red hot. Okay, yes, they might sweep the West Coast trip in Calgary tonight. All true. But you also have to have the foundation to win in the play. You don't right now. Philip Broberg is not an answer to playing big minutes. I just don't see him. He's a young kid. And they are not in a position where you hang on to a young kid because you're trying to develop. You have Connor fucking McDavid on your team. This is your window. Because I know Canadians are polite. We don't like to upset people, and we say sorry and all this. But I don't think he's sticking around for a whole long time if this is the way it's going. If their team is this much of a mess, if they're still like this in a couple years, he's not sticking around. Because why would you? He's trying to win. He's trying to build a legacy. I could be wrong. I don't think I will be. 2 defensemen in Edmonton. If there's a trade in there where you can get a forward, do it. If you trade with Arizona and you can get Jacob Chychrun, you can pull off the deal. We got more trades coming in. So I'm going to break. I want to get through this Edmonton piece first because there's more and more trades coming in. There's a Leafs trade. Where was I going with Edmonton? Trying to get through these deals. If you can trade with Arizona, you get Chychrun. Broberg's in the deal. You have first-round picks. You got other stuff, prospects. And you could get Chychrun and Nick Schmaltz. Do it. I like Nick Schmaltz. I think he's a good player. If you could get Lawson Krause, who I love, do that. So there's still possibilities for this team. There's still moves that you can make. But they need 2 defensemen, and if you can throw a forward in the trade, do it. But their depth still sucks up front. Their depth on defense stinks. Their goaltending's not very good. It's not going to get any better. They have no fucking cap room, and their team sucks. McDavid could have took. Leon Draisaitl makes $8.5 million. Imagine he took the money the Leafs players did, and Edmonton still has no cap. He makes $8.5 million. He's one of the 5 best players in the NHL. Period. And there's still this much of a troubled situation. Now, Ken Holland did pull off a good move today. He traded Jesse Puljujarvi, the much maligned Jesse Puljujarvi by the team and yours truly. And actually, Jesse Puljujarvi's been tough on himself because he said he lost confidence this year and said he didn't even know if he could play anymore. Jesse Puljujarvi was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes for Patrick Puistila. But the bigger news here is that Edmonton did not retain any of the salary. So $3 million of the salary cap. $3 million salary cap money gone off the Edmonton Oilers roster. And the Carolina Hurricanes take on Jesse Puljujarvi. For Edmonton, this opens up more room for them to play. They didn't have to keep any money. They found a team that was willing to take a chance on Puljujarvi. And if there's a team that's going to make him work, it is absolutely Carolina because they find guys and they fix them. He's an RFA at the end of the year. We'll see. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to probably go deep. On the surface, I don't see how it works because I don't think Puljujarvi is a Rob Brendamore guy. There are games where you look at Puljujarvi and you see the effort and you see a guy that could play a bottom 6 role and have a whole lot of success. But to me, he's not consistent enough with his effort. Kotkaniemi didn't work in Montreal. He was the 3rd overall pick. They played him too early, and he was never going to be an elite offensive talent. But he had the work ethic. He had the hockey IQ where he could go to Carolina, be a bottom 6 player, but fit in very well because he knew the game. And he accepted that role, and he's relished it, and has been a very good player in Carolina, quite frankly. Who makes too much money, but that's besides the point. Where Puljujarvi has been a bottom 6 forward since November, December at the latest, and he's been no good in that. They've had games where they've dressed 11 forwards, and he's a healthy scratch because Puljujarvi just doesn't bring anything to the table. No effort, no back check, nothing. Just a guy that's out there. Yes, he's a body, and technically he's living, but you couldn't really tell. He goes to Carolina where you have Aho, and you have other Finnish players. Who can serve his countrymen with him. So maybe he'll be more comfortable. I think he'll be excited about the change of scenery. He needed to leave Edmonton. They needed to get rid of him. But there's another high draft pick that's a fail for Edmonton. Yakupov, Puljujarvi. To an extent, Taylor Hall, because he had the majority of his success outside of Edmonton. Nuge is the best first overall pick, bar none, other than the McDavid. But in that era, Nuge just stayed around the entire time. Not many picks were great ones. But for Ken Holland, you didn't have to retain any of that money, and the fact that you got rid of it without having to do that is a win in and of itself. That's a win that you were able to find a team that was willing to do it. You get practically nothing in return, but that's about what you're going to get now. Is money. You got more flexibility, more room to play with. To make a move for multiple defensemen like I've been pontificating about. But Edmonton is under immense pressure to do something. To do something big, and I think it's going to require multiple trades. We're seeing what these teams are doing in the Eastern Conference. Multiple trades, multiple moves. The West can be had, bro. Colorado's the best team, but Colorado needs a second-line center. I've been saying that for 3 fucking weeks. Yes, they're winning now, but can they win a cup without one? I have my doubts. Can't be JT Compher for the rest of the year. I don't buy it. I love Mikko Rantanen. He's a low-key Hart nominee for me. He's been that good. He's got up to 40 goals on the season. But Mitch Marner's such a better player. Just kidding, Leafs fans. I love them all. But today, the main thought in Edmonton is Matthias Ekholm, Cam Fowler, Jake Chychrun. One of those 3 men, unless there's a defenseman that just comes out of the woodwork, that is like Luke Schenn doesn't count. He's an add-on. He's the Nick Jensen add to me. Or another defenseman you can throw in there that's a depth piece, that doesn't count. It has to be somebody of significance. Because Darnell Nurse cannot play 28 minutes a night, and Cody Ceci plays 24, and then the rest of the team, you just file them in. Evan Bouchard needs to be your 4th most important defenseman at best. Kulak needs to be number 6 on your team going into the playoffs if he's still on this roster, which he will be because you gave him a 5-year deal for some reason. Because so many teams wanted Brett Kulak. I don't buy that for a second. You got suckered like people get suckered by Scott Boras in baseball, where you give an 11-year contract to a guy that nobody wanted anyway. Give him more money. Give him a contract extension for 6 years at 36. You sad sack. There's a player teams could take a big swing on. I'm going to get to that in a second. Because I think we might have a new seller into the mix. I think there's still going to be a lot more trades. This has been a crazy period. It's been fun. So we have another trade to announce. This just broke. The Maple Leafs are at it again. The Toronto Maple Leafs have traded Rasmus Sandin, former first-round pick defenseman, to the Washington Capitals for defenseman Erik Gustafsson and a 2023 first-round pick, according to Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman. The first-round selection is the pick Washington acquired from the Boston Bruins in the Dmitry Orlov trade. So, an interesting move, to say the least. I did not expect... I did think Rasmus Sandin could be dealt during this trade deadline period. I've talked about that before. To me, he was by far the defenseman when it came to Liljegren or Sandin. That is the guy that you can get rid of. He brings less to the table. He has more flaws in his game. But the Maple Leafs get a first-round pick back. They obviously had to trade theirs originally to get Ryan O'Reilly. So you could look at this one of 2 ways. This year, it'd be Boston's pick. Maybe it's the 32nd pick in the draft. Maybe you beat them and it becomes a better pick and you win a cup and you still have a first-round draft pick. That's the best case scenario, obviously. So this could be something where the Leafs keep that first-round pick and you have a draft pick in the draft because that's what you want to do. Or this is a pick that you can continue to make moves and try to improve your team. Erik Gustafsson for Rasmus Sandin. I don't view Erik Gustafsson as an upgrade over Rasmus Sandin myself. But if Erik Gustafsson's going to stay on this team, don't be shocked if he gets a look on the top power play unit. As I've talked about before, the Maple Leafs are searching for somebody to quarterback the power play. That is what Erik Gustafsson is best at, because his defending game, his game of being reliable defensively, being a guy that's going to be physical, is non-existent. He's a Kyle Dubas defenseman if there ever was one. And as I look at their depth chart on defense, you have Morgan Rielly, who's obviously going to play. Jake McCabe's going to play. Brody's going to play. Liljegren's going to play. Giordano's going to play. Gustafsson replacing Justin Hall, I don't...
I don't view that as a huge win. I don't know. To me, I wouldn't be shocked if Gustafsson or if this first is dealt again. Because you can get more. If you could get. What if you use this first round pick to get Matt Murray off your roster? Just a thought. If you go to a bad team, what if they took on Matt Murray and you threw that first round pick and you added another goalie? What if you called up Arizona and you could get Carl Velmelka, you get them Matt Murray, you get a first round pick and you add some more stuff? I don't trust Matt Murray to be available. How could you? The guy's always hurt. He's never around, and he'll get injured at the most inopportune time. It's great to have a first-round pick, and maybe Dubas views that as having one in this draft is so important, and just for him himself, that might be peace of mind, and I get that. But if you can look to improve your roster somewhere else, I think you do it. Now you have Gustafsson, and to me it's Gustafsson and Hall who are battling for a spot in the roster. Before it was Rasmus Sandin and Justin Hall. The best thing about this is that Sandin was a first-round pick. They likely didn't want him sitting out of the lineup through an entire postseason run. If Erik Gustafsson does remain on the team, he's a depth guy. Timmins is a depth guy. They both know it. Hall is also a depth player. So I just think there's less feelings there. It's less animosity because you knew you were traded for depth and you can plug in and out of the lineup very easily if that's the way they choose to use you. I don't think Sandin would have taken it as well. I don't know what his attitude would have been like. We've seen him in contract negotiations already. It doesn't seem like he's the easiest guy to deal with. His agent and him, I think, have a higher sense of self than they should. Rasmus Sandin has proven really nothing at the NHL level. He's staring his counterpart has gotten better. But for Washington, they take a flyer on a defense, and they've got Dmitry Orlov's off the team. Nick Jensen could be moved the next couple days. Erik Gustafsson leads the team, so they add a young defenseman who's got another year on his deal. It's not a bad gamble for them. It's not a bad gamble for them to have a guy to see if they can get something out of him that Toronto couldn't. With John Carlson out, maybe he'll be their number one power play guy for the rest of the year, which would give him an opportunity that he would not be given in Toronto because the way practice looked today, he's a healthy scratch. So he wouldn't be given that. He wouldn't be playing. In Washington, he will play the rest of the year. So that's better for him when it comes to his long-term development. Now, I wouldn't have traded a first-round pick for him. But seeing where the first-round picks go, and figuring that it's Boston's pick and it'll be high, that's basically a second-round pick. And I had friends who texted me and they listened to yesterday's show and they said, you hate draft picks. And it's not true. It's not true whatsoever. I just think picks aren't that valuable when you're trying to win. What's a pick? Okay, I know picking my nose. You got a draft pick. If you're trying to win, the player that you're drafting in July can't help you because you know what? The season's done by then. That's just how I view it. I think draft picks are extremely valuable if you know what you're doing with them. But draft picks are far more valuable to Chicago. They're far more valuable to these teams that aren't any good. Because they need to find their pieces. They need to find the players that have made teams great. That get you McDavids, that get you other players. Because otherwise you're stuck. But I would say this is a good piece of business by Kyle Dubas, getting a first-round pick back to your team when you didn't have one. You've traded away pieces and you improve your roster. That's really good general managing. I said this yesterday. It's on the team now. Gustafsson, he's a power play specialist. That's what he does. Gustafsson was on the power play for Montreal when they made the Stanley Cup final run in the bubble. Now, it was not a successful power play. They did not score a power play goal in the entire Stanley Cup final, and it didn't have a great percentage, but he ran their power play. Morgan Riley's been running the power play for much of the season in Toronto, and it's been successful, but in spite of him. I think Gustafsson might have actually scored a hat trick this year against the Maple Leafs, which is an interesting tidbit that he joins a team that he scored a hat trick against this year. So the Leafs pull off another move. I do think there's still a possibility for them to use that first round pick to do something. To report, I'm reading on Twitter here, they're still $550,000 over the cap, so technically, if they wanted to start Matt Murray tomorrow night in Edmonton, they wouldn't be able to unless there was another injury. An injury on the roster. Because they're over the salary cap. Maybe he won't be available then. Maybe they'll keep him on there for a couple more days. I think Matt Murray's got a partial no trade, so that's difficult to get rid of him. But if you could move him and get a backup goalie that you trust more, I mean, you like Samsonov. He's been very good for you. He's been steady all year, and barring that one injury, he's been available when you need him. But if you could use that first round pick to get off of Matt Murray, and you in the same deal acquire a backup goalie or enough that gives you more stability. I don't know. I would personally, because I don't like having Band-Aids on my team. I don't like having people that I don't trust. Just think about life. Do you usually bring people into your life that you don't trust, or you feel are really uneasy, or that could screw you at any given moment? It's not how I like to live my life. Could you get something from Arizona? Is Capo Kakinen a better option in San Jose? Is there a bigger deal in Nashville that you could make? I doubt they do it. But to think that Matt Murray is your fallback option, I think you're saying that. I think Joseph Wall is your fallback option because Matt Murray could hurt his hamstring in warm-up and he's out of the game because it's actually happened this year. And before his injury, he wasn't playing all that well either. So Samsonov started 2 playoff games in his career. He was pulled from one of them. Started the first 2 playoff games for Washington last year against Florida, and then he was done. He wasn't good in that series either. But the Leafs have options, and that's the best thing. They can make some calls and see what goalies are available. Thatcher Demko's in Vancouver. He played last night. First game back, didn't play great, but they won the game. Much better team defense in Toronto than there is in Vancouver. I don't know. Just it gives them more flexibility now, gives them more options. Because I think they've added to their defense. They have really good depth up front. If you want to make a trifecta, you look at your net mining position and see what you can do to improve it. I don't think it's completely out of the question. Do I think they do it? No. But I would look into it. Because I'm trying to win. Playing chess, not checkers. Another trade, just moments before the Leafs deal. The Minnesota Wild acquired Marcus Johansson from the Washington Capitals. Washington's been busy this afternoon for a 2024 third-round pick. Johansson's become the least Stepniak. Every year at the deadline, he seems to be moved. He's been traded to Boston in the past, been traded to Carolina. He's played for the Buffalo Sabres. He's been everywhere. He's a depth forward, bottom six guy. Don't expect him to have a huge impact on the game. But you have Minnesota, a team with very little cap room. A team that has to win playing a certain way. Where they have one of the best players in the game in Kaprizov. Zuccarello's still a very good player. Ryan Hart, they got a physical team. They defend extremely well. But Johansson does add more of a scoring touch to their team. But they don't have a whole lot to play with. And now for Minnesota, it's just, do you trade Matt Dumba, pending unrestricted free agent? You're not going to be able to keep him. What's the market for him? There's Chychrun. Gavrikov is still available. Luke Schenn is still available. Matthias Ekholm, as I mentioned before. Nick Jensen in Washington. So what's the market for these players? But it's a move for Minnesota. It's not a splash trade. It's not something that's going to change the outlook on their season. But hey, good for Minnesota. You add to your team a little bit. It only costs you a third-round pick next year. So this is really Washington wanting to get rid of a player off their roster, and they were able to find a trade partner in Minnesota. Now, other news today before we get to where kind of matchmaking situations. Pittsburgh put a pair of players on waivers. Depth player Brock McGinn, who's had a really poor season, is not scoring any goals, has not been productive. He was signed to a 5-year deal, had a really good start with the team, had a great start to his career in Carolina, but he's tailed off and is not having great production. That's the second player that's making over $3 million that they put on waivers in the last 3 to 4 days, which is woof. And they also put Mark Friedman on waivers. He's a defenseman. I think Brock McGinn's got 1 year after this on his deal, so I don't think somebody will pick him up. But I like the guy. He may just need a change of scenery. I like his compete. Just the scoring touch isn't there. That whole Pittsburgh organization is weird. They're not winning a whole lot of games. They're trying to get into the playoffs. The contract might push some people away, but if I wouldn't be afraid to claim Brock McGinn. St. Louis claimed Kasperi Kapanen. So a playoff team may say, you know what, we'll claim Brock McGinn. We'll see what he can bring to our team. Worst case scenario, we trade him in the offseason. So that's the news from Pittsburgh. And the way they're moving contracts in and out, I think they're going to do something over the next 3 days to improve their team. Even if it's a small move, I think they'll do something because they need to show the fans, they need to show their players that they are trying to win, even if they don't get a shot, which they don't. A team I did not expect to be in the mix when it comes to the trade market was the Detroit Red Wings because they were on a heater the last couple weeks. And they were winning games and Everything's going well, but then they get shut out by Tampa on Saturday night when Vasilevsky goes, just legend Vasilevsky. And they lose their second in a row last night to the Ottawa Senators. So 2 straight losses all of a sudden. Pittsburgh had won twice. And now you're looking down the barrel and saying, I don't know if we can catch these teams. And even if we get into the playoffs, as I've talked about at length, do we have any shot at beating anyone in the Eastern Conference? And the answer is probably no. So if you're Detroit, you're not confident you're going to make the playoffs anyway. If you're Steve Yzerman, I think it's time you look in the mirror and say, well, I have some assets that I think teams are going to want, and teams might get more and more desperate because they see big names coming off the board. Teams are getting better. How can we stay afloat? And I think there's one team in the Eastern Conference that should feel the pressure, and I think there's about a bunch of teams in the West that should look at the situation and say, we can get a whole lot better, and we can get to the Stanley Cup final because no team in this conference is great, which I also think is true. So first thing for Detroit, to me, Tyler Bertuzzi should be back on the market, and he should be dealt at the trade deadline. He's got 9 points in his last 11 games. He scored a goal last night against Ottawa. He's a power forward. He plays with bite to his game. We've seen Tanner Jeannot get traded. I've talked about guys like Tom Wilson before. Tyler Bertuzzi is a jack of all trades. He's got good hands. He's got physicality. I like him a lot. We saw Carolina today. They traded for Jesse Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi he's a Band-Aid. He's not a fix. He's not something that's a massive deal. He's a project on a team that wants to win a Stanley Cup. So it's not exactly reassuring. So I think Bertuzzi would fit in Carolina because I think he would fit with Brendamore. I think he'd play the way Brendamore likes his team to play. They compete, they backcheck, they do all those things. But I thought more about Carolina's situation today. They were reportedly in on Chychrun. But to me, Carolina needs to look up front. I love Slavin. Brent Burns has been a great ad. Brett Pesce, Brady Shea. They have a really good defense core. They defend to address their team, in my humble opinion. I think the Canes should be calling Detroit about the availability of Dylan Larkin. Carolina whiffed on Timo Meier. I thought it was the perfect fit. I thought it would have pushed them over the top. He ends up in Jersey, a team you could possibly play down the line. Patrick Kane is in New York. Tarasenko, they wouldn't have wanted him anyway. He's in New York. Teams around you in your division are getting better, while you add Jesse Puljujarvi to the fold. Don Waddell, the GM, I can give him the same complaint that I give to Kevin Cheveldayoff, where the Carolina Hurricanes have had great teams for a decade, and yet they've been very, very stagnant, and they've been scared to try to pull off a big deal. They've been scared to push their chips all the way into the middle and try something big. Trading for Max Domi last year, not exactly groundbreaking. Trading for Antti Raanta a few years ago, he's still on the roster, didn't change the core of this team. Getting Brent Burns in the offseason was a good move. It's a move I didn't think would pay off, and I've absolutely been wrong about it. But you need another great to a star player on this team, and the best one available is Dylan Larkin. He may want to go back to Michigan. He may want to stay with the Detroit Red Wings. But if you're Steve Yzerman and you could trade a player, get multiple picks, and then that player returns in the offseason and the team and the player is better for it, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it? And if you're Dylan Larkin, go play for the Carolina Hurricanes for a couple months and see what you can do. See what kind of success, see the fit with the two of you, and see if you can go win a Stanley Cup. The Canes have Svechnikov. They have Aho. They have Marty Netcash, who I like a lot. Seth Jarvis is a good player. Kakaniemi can do the job. Stefan Nason plays in their bottom six. They have a very, very good team. But to me, they need another player of substance. They need another player that makes you excited about the team, that makes you a threat. And Dylan Larkin is that. Dylan Larkin's a very good hockey player. A very good hockey player. And he does a lot of good things. He skates well. He moves the puck. He's playing really competitively lately. He's scoring goals. I like Dylan Larkin a hell of a lot. And I like him in Carolina because I think he'll fit in. And I think Rob Brendamore can say, this is the way we play hockey here. That's the swing for Carolina, and that's me matchmaking. Carolina's got picks, Detroit. Carolina's got prospects. They draft well. Also, again, I said draft picks are valuable to certain people. They're valuable to Steve Yzerman because he drafted Braden Point. He drafted Nikita Kucherov. He drafted the best players in Tampa that have built their core of that team and they're winning. Vasilevsky drafted him. So, and what was Tampa at that time? To all the people that say, I don't value draft picks. Oh yeah, they weren't any good. So you send the draft picks to the teams that aren't any good. This is the thing. In the world now, you're good for a certain time and then you're not. And that's where fan bases have to accept this. If you want to win, you're going to have to trade your draft picks and then you're going to suck for 2 to 3 year period and build it back up. That's just the way of the world. Chicago won 3 cups. They haven't been good for a while. You know why Toronto, you know why these teams that don't win are good for a longer period of time, but they stay in mediocrity? Because they didn't push their chips in. Chicago did. Tampa will be bad in a number of years because they've done everything they can to win. That's the difference. They're in hell because you win and then you're stuck. Pittsburgh's tried to propel longevity. They tried to propel their winning ways. They should have done this 2 to 3 years ago, yet they're still in this holding pattern of we got to keep all our veteran players, and it's stupid. It's ownership, I think, afraid that fans won't come to the games. They got bankruptcy back in their mind because Sidney Crosby saved them from it. Like Gretzky with the LA Kings. Like Magic Johnson and Dr. Jerry Buss in the 80s. But your team is just mediocre and non-threatening for a long time, and that's no way to live either. A fan base that's just okay with mediocrity, then you're okay with life just being okay. Okay? You don't want better than okay? Ugh. The Canes, Dylan Larkin, take your swing. Make it happen. My top 4 teams that are under the most pressure over the next couple of days to make deals of substance in no particular order. Carolina Hurricanes, the Dallas Stars, the Ottawa Senators, and the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg Jets are reeling, man. They got the LA Kings tonight, and they got players going to be UFA. They got a team that they believe can win a Stanley Cup, and yet they would keep playing the way they are. They're going to miss the playoffs. No joke. losing games left, right, and center. They're playing horrible defensively. Nothing's going right in Winnipeg. So what needs to happen? To me, the perfect player to add to this Winnipeg Jets team is TJ Oshie. TJ Oshie's a pending unrestricted free agent, if you didn't know. He's playing some incredible hockey the last couple days. Playing well with Dylan Strome. But again, Washington's trading pieces. They traded Orlov and they traded Hathaway, pending unrestricted free agents. They traded Gustafsson, pending unrestricted free agent. Marcus Johansson, pending unrestricted free agent. They got a first for Orlov. They flipped that into Sandin. Washington's a team that is not going to want to lose. They're going to make this quick. I think they look at it like St. Louis, where they want to try to get better in very short term because they have Ovechkin on the roster. I get it. And hopefully a healthy John Carlson. And you're signed Darcy Kemper long term. Oshie can help your team, but it can also help your team because you're trading with Winnipeg and maybe you can get something decent in return. I think Washington would take on Jansen Harkins. Jansen Harkins is a player who's played at the NHL level. He's playing with the Manitoba Moose right now, and he's never really been given a great opportunity to play higher in the lineup and see if it works. I think I would take a chance on him. That's something that would make a whole lot of sense. They don't have any pressure the rest of the year. They're going to lose. They want to lose. So be aggressive. Add a player that has everything to gain going to that team. And the team has everything to try to help the kid. So he be part of it. A first-round pick plus. And you add TJ Oshie to that Winnipeg Jet mix. We have Scheifele, who's uber competitor. Wheeler, who's very competitive. Morrissey, who wants to win. You have a coach who's 70 years old, so of course he wants to win. He's not doing it for much longer. They need somebody of substance again. Certain teams need a splash player. Oshie to Winnipeg is a perfect fit. Another winger. You got Ehlers, Oshie, Connor, Scheifele. Sound good up front? And also, they should look at a defenseman as well. I think Luke Shen to Tampa. He's been there before. That makes a whole lot, but I call on him. The Gavrikov to Winnipeg would make sense to me because they need some size on that back end, and that's something he does bring. If you're not going to give up the farm for him, that's something that you could also look into. But I like, to me, Oshie is a name that's not been reported about much, and I'm trying to find gems here. I talked about Konechny to Colorado. I also think if Colorado can't find a way to get Konechny out of Philly, they should be on the horn like the Canes and calling Steve Yzerman about Dylan Larkin. Because you had Dylan Larkin to Colorado, oof. They're all of a sudden a juggernaut again and by far head and shoulders the favorite to win the Western Conference. Because they got McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog's going to be back. You just got Jack Johnson. You got basically your same defense that you had last year. If Alex Newhook needs to go in the deal back to Detroit, you do it. Detroit gets a young center. The young from the American League, hopefully next year. Philly Husso has been fantastic for them this year. Larkin can return to free agency after he wins a cup. Prospect. It's the best of both worlds. Maybe that makes more sense. But if you can get a player to come back, even if he doesn't, it's something that I think you should explore because why let somebody just sit through the day? It always made no sense to me. Unless you know the player is going to re-sign. And Dylan Larkin could have signed a contract on July 1. And it's February 28th now, and he still hasn't. The team and the player, there's clearly something holding them back. Money, term, years, I don't know what it is. But if there's no sign, nothing on the dotted line, that means it's an opportunity for the player to leave. It's also an opportunity on the organization to help it short and long term. Make a deal that helps you, and you can bring the player back, and it helps him when he gets back to the team because the team's more competitive next year, and hopefully you can make the playoffs. But if I'm Detroit, I'm exploring trades on the Dylan Larkin front. It currently should be much higher, but that's my feeling currently. And I think when it comes to Tyler Bertuzzi, I think it's very high. I think just probably an 80% chance he's dealt because I don't know if he's in their long-term future. And I think there'll be a lot asked for him around the league. So, interesting stuff there. Luke Schenn to Tampa. I'm going to say Gavrikov. Gavrikov to Winnipeg would make a whole lot of sense too. Gavrikov could potentially go to Edmonton. That would make some sense. James Van Riemsdyk is out there. That could be a guy Dallas looks at. Reporting in Phillies, he's definitely going to be dealt. Boone Jenner's another quiet one where I doesn't sound like he's going to be moved, but he would interest me. Jonas Corposalo in Columbus to the Leafs, potentially, in that Matt Murray deal that I've proposed. He'd be a better goalie. At least he's healthy. And actually, we got more deals breaking right now. I'm on Twitter as I'm on the show. Chris Johnson here in Pierre Engvall has been dealt to the Islanders. So Pierre Engvall is traded from the Leafs. And hearing Frank Cervelli, hearing the Leafs have acquired Luke Schenn from the Canucks. So Luke Schenn's not going to Tampa Bay. Leafs had more depth on that back end. Make a trade with the Canucks. They're doing everything right now. Every trade is the Leafs. I like Luke Schenn. I haven't heard the return yet. Nothing is coming in yet, but if I'm still alive, I'll let you know about it. If not, we'll talk about it tomorrow. But this is crazy. The amount of trades they're pulling off. I've never seen a team do this much. Credit to Kyle Dubas. And I'll tell you, if you're a Leaf fan and you hear Pierre Engvall is gone from your team, that is such a good day. That's such a good day. He brings nothing to the table. Built like a giraffe, and he plays like a mouse. And I have no time for him. But if the return comes in for both of these deals, interesting deals, both of them. So can confirm Luke Schenn has been acquired by the Leafs. Luke Schenn to Toronto. But the full return are not in yet. So that's happening currently. We also got, what else have we got here? I wanted to link Brock Besser to, so Schenn to Toronto, third this year. So Luke Schenn goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, a third-round pick in the 2023 NHL draft is going back to the that's about what that's fair. Luke Schenn's worth a third. He's not worth any more than that. He's a depth defenseman. And a pretty crazy story for Luke Schenn. He started his career in Toronto, was a 5th overall pick by the team, played as an 18-year-old, Shouldn't have. His career went down a different path. Played with his brother in Philadelphia. Had his struggles. And now, he goes to Tampa, wins a cup, ends up in Vancouver, plays a couple years, and now he's back where it all started. Cool story for Luke Schenn. So now you got Gustafsson there. You have Justin Hall, who's still on the team. They have a lot of defensemen, a lot of depth, a lot of options, and that's something you love to see. Have 8-9 defensemen going into the playoffs is exactly the way you want to have it, and that's what the Leafs have set themselves up to do. Leveraging everything. Still waiting to hear on the Engvall deal. Third in 2024 is the return. So Engvall to the Islanders for a third-round pick in 2024. That's a good return. Because I guarantee the third-round pick will be better than Pierre Engvall. And they needed to move a body off the roster to make this work. Luke Schenn comes in. You get rid of Pierre Engvall. I like it. I'd rather have Luke Schenn than have Pierre Engvall. Interesting stuff. But Kyle Dubas is making it all happen. Luke Schenn, another player off the board. He's now in Toronto. Another defenseman that you can't acquire. It's just anarchy, but they're going all in. I appreciate that. And, I was said earlier about how people told me I hate draft picks. I don't. But clearly the Maple Leafs have the same viewpoint as me, is that draft picks aren't that valuable if you're winning. And they are. They're going all in. And this is the way, if I'm Kyle Dubas, if I lose, I'm going out in a blaze of glory because I'm trying to win. I have no contract after this season. If we lose, it's going to be because the players didn't show up. And management lets me go knowing full well that I put a really good team around them. I gave them depth. I gave them every possible chance. I still believe this will keep them over the salary cap. So they could possibly still look into that Matt Murray trade, which I still think is a possibility. And I think would be a good move, but that might be out of the question now. Luke Schenn comes in. Pierre Engvall moves out. So up front, they added Sam Lafferty. They added Nola Chari. You had more and more depth up front. Pierre Engvall was just occupying a space that you really didn't have a place for him anymore. He doesn't bring a whole lot to the table. And I think it was becoming more and more clear, for better or for worse, the Leafs value Alex Kerfoot more than Pierre Engvall. And I don't love either player, but I would rather have Kerfoot. So I think it's a smart decision by the Maple Leafs to do that. I like Luke Schenn. A third-round pick is exactly what he's worth. You get that. But to think you got Ryan O'Reilly, Nola Chari, Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe, Luke Schenn, a first-round pick, Boston's first-rounder, and Erik Gustafsson. You've traded away first and conditional firsts and a lot of stuff. But you're trying to, like, if you're a player on the team, you're incredibly motivated because you're trying to win. Because you look at your GM and say, hey, I know he's doing well by us because he's not holding on to these assets. He's doing everything he can to win. So kudos to him. Will Ken Holland be the same way? Will Kevin Cheveldayoff have the same attitude? Does Don Waddell finally pull a trigger in Carolina and make a move of substance? How do general managers like David Poile leave their mark as he leaves Nashville with Matthias Ekholm and other pieces that could potentially be moved? Jarmo Kekalainen, is he on the hot seat in Columbus? He's been there a long time, little success. What can he do? Montreal Canadiens have been quiet. Do they trade away any assets? Could Josh Anderson find his way out of Montreal, who I think would have a lot of value to teams around the league? But that remains to be seen. What I do know is that certain GMs have been on it. Dubas, Don Sweeney in Boston improved the best team in hockey. Tampa addressed a need. They got another power forward. Edmonton opened up cap space to hopefully do something significant. Trades galore. I think we'll have more and more stuff. I was going to get to the NFL and get to some baseball stuff. I'll save that for tomorrow when Seamus joins me tomorrow afternoon. We'll get his reaction to will all the players be available. Luke Shen, not a long flight for him. Maybe he gets to the game tomorrow in time. Leafs play Vancouver on Saturday night as well, so Luke Shen will play his old team rather quickly in that building. But yeah, we'll recap all of that tomorrow. Also get into some big injury in baseball. Seamus loves his Dodgers. One of the key cogs for the Dodgers tore his ACL. Gavin Lux done for the season. They have a hole in the infield. Can they address it? Do they do something before the season starts? That remains to be seen. We'll get into some NBA as well. LeBron James is hurt. He's out 2 weeks. We'll talk, Light the Beam, Sacramento Kings, and all of that fun stuff. So that'll be on tomorrow's program. And as always, we are on trade deadline watch. Anything else happens, we'll break it all down tomorrow like we did today. But it's been a fun first couple of days of the week so far because throughout the show, before the show, there's been move after move. Trades live. I love it. Fun stuff to talk about and good content. So I can't complain. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. We'll recap the trades in more detail as we go along. Patrick Kane is a New York Ranger. Rasmus Sandin is a Washington Capital. Luke Shen is a Toronto Maple Leaf. And maybe the happiest of all for Leaf fans out there, Pierre Engvall is a New York Islander. Yes. And Jesse Puljujarvi is no longer with the Edmonton Oilers. He's a Carolina Hurricane. So, we'll talk tomorrow. Until then, this is to the point.